Hey again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment in our Retrospective figure showcase series. And for this series, I like to either take a look back at an older figure from my collection that hasn't gotten a lot of love in some time, or unbox something that I've had in storage for way too long. And for today's episode, we'll be unboxing another figure from our Resident Evil series line, and it'll be Jill Valentine in her Battlesuit edition from Resident Evil 5. So I think it's fair to say that if you're at all familiar with the Resident Evil franchise, Jill Valentine is one of those names that resonates with you, and you'll immediately recognize her from multiple games in the series and also from some of the movies. So before looking at the figure and even discussing this version of Jill, Hot Toys did also have a BSAA version of her in her more standard combat gear to go along with Chris Redfield. Of course, in my earlier collecting days, I made the mistake of selling her off, which, like with Shiva Alomar, has to be one of my biggest collecting regrets. Just saying. I wish I had held on to her to have both versions on display, although the BSAA Jill is really only featured in a flashback scene when both her and Chris take on the souped up version of Wesker. But looking on the brighter side of things, at least I have a version of Jill that I do think is a bit of a standout. In the game, she's the mysterious figure that appears, first with a full mask, and then ultimately is revealed to be Jill Valentine, being controlled by Wesker. And needless to say, in the game, the cutscenes and action sequences with her were outstanding. Sure, you might argue that some of the moments are way over the top, but she kicked ass. And while maybe not carrying the gravitas of some movies, I did get a sense of surprise and tension when Wesker finally reveals her identity to both Chris and Shiva. And I do think Jill in this particular look paired up extremely well with that midnight version of Wesker. And in those cutscenes, the two of them are basically this unstoppable force. So, let's look at the figure and the overall package we're getting here. And if there was one thing these Hot Toys Resident Evil figures did well, they came loaded with a ton of accessories and weapons. So as you can see, this Jill is no different, with a fairly impressive array of weaponry and some accessories to create some alternate looks, although more on that later. But a pretty impressive set overall, although a lot of these pieces also did come with the BSAA version of Jill, so there was a lot of reuse. And I will also say in this case, having this display stand that Hot Toys provided is really a necessity because unfortunately the figure does need the added support. So with the overview done, let's dive in a little more into the accessories, and we'll start with the spare hands, which again, as opposed to modern figures where you get hands custom designed for every single accessory and then even have a bunch of posed hands for combat stances and the like, here you were only getting really the bare minimum to make the figure work. So we were getting two spare gun holding hands with the pre-molded trigger finger. Both look great with that molded purple to simulate gloves, including some nice stitchwork detailing. Very serviceable and necessary if you did want to use those guns. Now, the next accessory is the mask that Jill wears earlier in the game, when her identity hasn't been revealed. Now, this was something Hot Toys added in later, after the pre-order, when the figure was announced, because originally I don't think it was included. But it's a good-looking piece with the nice translucent red plastic lenses at the eyes. The entire mask has the feel of a plague mask, like those seen in Europe during some of the pandemics that happened during, a long time ago, which, given the theme of the games, does fit well. It's held onto the figure sculpt with an elastic band, so pretty straightforward. Now, the next piece also goes with this early look from the game, which is a long poncho with a hood that has a number of snaps to hold it in place and have the hood kind of retain a good shape. Now, first of all, the fabric's okay. It's a little thicker than maybe they could have gone with, but the pattern with this range of blues and grays and black, creating this camo pattern really does stand out. Plus, there's actually a ton of weathering here that makes this article of clothing feel used and worn. It's a really nice touch overall, and it is slightly wired to help you attain some dynamic poses. Although I will say there are no snaps, so you do need to slide this, no snaps on the rest of the poncho, so you have to slide it onto the figure, which posed a bit of a challenge to me that I'll discuss later. Now, next accessory is key for the figure, and it's the control apparatus that we find out after a lengthy fight in the game is how Wesker has managed to pull Jill to fight alongside him. And it's that moment where she basically rips open her jumpsuit to reveal the device. Now, Hot Toys did a great job here. First of all, it's a magnetic piece that locks itself onto a corresponding magnet on the figure's chest, and then it has the great red control piece in the center, along with the two tubules that extend out and inject themselves into Jill's skin. I think this was a key accessory for this figure. Now moving on to weapons, you have a nicely done simple sidearm with a laser sight mounted on the forward rail. Piece is nicely detailed and is a mix of black for the lower portion of the gun with a more matte silver for the upper slide and trigger. Slide does rack back on a spring, which is a nice detail to have, and there is a removable clip as well. But the next two are really the pieces that, at least for me, stand out, and they stand out from the game as well. And they're pieces I've seen elsewhere, but I just can't recall what the guns are called. But they're two identical submachine guns, and I basically took one to showcase the way that they're used in the game, and the other to show the articulation and the detail work on the weapon itself. So first of all, detail work's amazing, with the matte black finish on the body of the gun and the nice faux wood grain apps on the handle. The weapons are really well detailed, showing the charging bolts and just a lot of great work, including a mounted laser at the base of the gun. Stock does unfold, and it is a metal wire piece, at least in mine, which gives it a little more sturdy feel. Clip is removable, and the upper portion of the body does flip forward. Again, not sure how much you might use these features, but they're provided, which I always like with these weapons. Now next you get the distinctive HK MP5. I think it's identical to the one that came with Wesker. It's such a distinctive weapon that's recreated perfectly in 6 scale here, with the anticipated matte black finish and the mounted flashlight on the forward guard. It also has an extendable stock as well as a functioning safety that can actually get flicked between safe, single, semi, and full auto. Then you have the distinctive sights, and if you flip the weapon around, you have that recognizable charging handle, although it is just sculpted and glued on, so you can't quite recreate the famous slab. And the final weapon is this amazing looking sniper rifle. It's again a pretty distinctive piece that I've seen numerous times in movies and video games. Pretty sure it makes an appearance in Metal Gear Solid as well. So look, I tell you everything that happens out of the box, and when I pulled this piece out, the rear portion of the stock did fall apart. Nothing that a little glue can't fix, but that is why you're seeing it separate from the main body of the rifle. Stock is huge here, as is the scope mounted on top, and the paintwork continues that theme of everything being well done, with a mix of silvers, black paint, and grays, as well as a very distinctive tan on the grip. There's really a lot to like here, and with this being such a distinctive piece, it feels like it might be something worth using. Now, final accessories can be held by the figure, but they're more Easter eggs for the game, with the very distinctive ammo boxes that you find littered around, as well as the first aid canister and the grenades. Now in the game, Jill isn't a playable character, so not sure you would ever pose her holding any of these, but I do think combined with the same accessories that come with the rest of the line, you could make a small little treasure trove of ammo just to remind anyone seeing these on display of the endless hunt for ammo in the game. Although RE4 and 5 had already done away with the more limited nature of ammunition that was present in the earlier games. So now let's look at the figure herself, and we're going to jump into the sculpt. Now, I think it's a pretty good recreation of Jill from the game, with the blonde hair that's really nicely molded and the ponytail that actually has to get pegged into the sculpt. Detail work on the face is also good, although not much detail to actually work with on the face, because in the game it's not like they put in a lot of wrinkles. So I think again it's a solid capture, and the paint app you do get here on her eyes and lips is decent enough, again for its time. And with these older figures, that's always the key. It's partly reminding yourself that these were light years ahead of anything on the market when they were released. And to be honest, I think another key is, does the figure still hold up? And I think from a sculpt perspective, it definitely does, even if the eyes aren't as lifelike as what we're used to seeing now. Now, looking at the rest of the figure, I think there's one stark thing that just stands out off the bat, and that's the neck. In profile, it doesn't look too bad, but looking straight on at the figure, it's hard not to notice that she does suffer from giraffe neck. For some reason, Hot Toys made the neck too long, and there's also a little discoloration on the body, so the sculpt doesn't quite match. So that's just another thing. Now, this was my first time unboxing, so I'm not sure if I can modify the neck to bring it down a little bit, but I'll definitely try. But besides that, I think the suit is actually really well done, with a great accuracy to the game, down to the different fabrics along the arms and the fabric ties that hold the submachine guns to her legs. And on her back, the battlesuit does have some nice detail work along her spine. In the game, she has a pretty strong presence, not quite as superhuman as Wesker, but still not totally human, so I think that's partly to do with the contraption on her chest and the suit she's using. Now, she is using the stand, because the biggest issue I had with this figure was getting her to stand. The shoes with the heels, I think Hot Toys might have oversized them to try to give the figure a little more balance. As a result, they do look a little funny to me, and the joints are a little bit loose. So coupled with the heel, I found it a little difficult to get this to stand the way I wanted it to. Although with a little patience, it wasn't impossible. Now, overall thoughts, and let me start with the alternate look. I actually really like the poncho over the suit. I like it because it does a good job of hiding that neck, which again just kind of stands out to me. The only issue with the poncho is that they do miss out on showcasing a lot of the great detail from the suit she has, as well as the piece on her chest, because the detail work again is pretty impressive. So you're kind of hiding that. Now the mask, while great looking, also hides the sculpt a little. So overall, it's a nice piece that just, I think, covers way too much. Now the other thing, I swear to you, this had to be one of the hardest articles of clothing I've ever had to put on a figure. Like I mentioned earlier, the poncho doesn't open, so you have to slide it onto the figure. First of all, my piece had joints that were really stuck in place. So I was sweating during this because I was sure I was going to break something as I was trying to manipulate the arms. Fortunately, I didn't. I took my time and made sure that the figure, the main body, remained fairly intact. But then getting that clothing on the arms was okay, but then the body that was used here is a tad busty, and the poncho is a little tight, so it's a bit of a squeeze to get this thing on. Once you get it on, though, it looks good, but again, I'm not looking forward to having to do that again. And anyway, like I said, the suit has so much detail. I feel like I want to showcase that and showcase that control piece on her chest, which is what really stands out from the game. Even with the neck issues, I think she still looks great. And I love the variety of weapons you get, because like most of the line, you can get some really great poses here. And I still don't know which way I'm going to go with her, but there's plenty to choose from. And as a companion piece to the Midnight Wesker, again, she's going to go great. One other thing to note, I think she is double jointed at the elbows, but the suit did restrict movement beyond the standard 90-degree bend, which was a little frustrating. But even for an older figure, I think it's a great piece and addition to the Resident Evil 5 line. Just unboxing her and unboxing the rest makes me feel really dumb, again, for selling that Jill and the Shiva Alamar. But that's collecting, right? So that was a quick look at Jill Valentine in 6-scale format from Resident Evil 5. This really is an overall great line, and she's a figure I'm happy to still own. Let me know your thoughts on this line or any of the current Resident Evil offerings out there. And as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.